Oh, I wear too many layers in this room. Bike shop is 58 degrees.
I'd like to call to order the March 12th, 2026 work session at 6:30 PM here in the Assembly Chambers. We'll start off with citizens' comments. Any comments from the audience? For those who wish to call in, the local number is 907-486-3231. Toll-free is 1-855-492-9202. Please turn off your radio or any listening device to prevent feedback. For those in the room who wish to speak under citizens' comments, please come to the podium and sign in. Turn on the microphone and make sure the green light is on before speaking, and speak directly into the mic. State your name for the record. Address all remarks to the assembly as a whole and not to any single member. Thank you. Doesn't look like anybody from the audience. Any calls? We'll wait another minute or so for calls. I'm not hearing any calls, so we'll move on to number 2, which is manager's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Smiley. The Architectural Review Board met on Monday, March 9th to go over the listed projects there. They approved Portline School painting to 95%, Annex Building underground storage tank removal drawings, and Providence Kodiak Island Medical Center design projects of the automatic transfer switches to 35%, air handling unit 1 to 65%, reverse osmosis and steam generator at 35%, and distribution panel 6 to 100%. The Citizens Academy had its first session on Tuesday, March 10th. The Engineering Facilities Director was the first department to present. Cody Allen did a really good job presenting the overview of the department. If you're interested in learning more about the Citizens Academy or attending, you can send an email indicating your interest to academy@kodiak.ak.us or just contact almost anyone here and we'll get you signed up. The Kodiak Island Borough successfully submitted their letter of interest to the Rural Health Transformation Program. Thanks to Megan Christensen and Providence for working together to ensure that we met that deadline. The application was very broad. It just said, what kind of project do you have? It was under $1 million, $1 million to $5 million, and so on and so forth. So the project that we picked was a chiller replacement, and it's about a $4.2 million project that we submitted. I put in your packet tonight the budget timeline so you can see what we're going to be doing. The highlighted orange are deadlines and timelines that we have to follow in accordance with code, and then what we'll be doing at each of those meetings, including a special work session to be held on April 23rd. We're still recruiting a director of engineering facilities. I have someone that accepted the Baylor supervisor job. We have also someone who accepted the code enforcement job, and we interviewed 2 people for environmental specialists this week. Still looking for an LTP supervisor as well. In finance, tomorrow's the last publication of the foreclosure list. Staff will be filing for a judgment and decree of foreclosure with the courts on or about April 13th. Once it's signed, the judgment will put a lien on real properties until delinquent taxes are paid. Since additional interest and fees continue to accrue, please call the Finance Department at 486-9324 for payoff amounts. In information technology, IT completed a major upgrade of backup and disaster recovery software and are working on transitioning out their network analyst, Mitchell Davison. Mitchell's last day is tomorrow, Friday, March 13th, and we want to thank Mitchell. Mitchell started out in the clerk's office and moved over to IT. He's been here for just over 5 years, and we're very thankful for the time he spent with us. IT continues to work on their perimeter firewalls and networking equipment for cybersecurity issues, and they're updating their financial software test systems for finance. GIS is continuing to work with community development on creating custom public notification maps for zoning and working with the Kodiak Historical Society on their project. We'll have a layer on our GIS map that lists all of the historical properties here in Kodiak. In assessing, we have good cause exemption hearings on May 21st. We have 7 late filer letters that were mailed on March 10th and 4 denial letters that were also mailed on March 10th for applicants that applied for exemptions on properties they either don't own or don't live at. For notice of values, the notice of value postcards were mailed on February 27th, 2026. If you have not received your postcard with the notice of value for your properties, you can contact the assessing department at 486-9353, and they can actually email you a copy of that card. We are in the appeal month. The protests for your notice of valuation began on March 1st and runs through March 31st. For exemption appeals, we just have the Alutiiq Heritage Foundation. That trial is scheduled for July 27th through 29th of this year. We timely filed our brief on March 9th. The second appeal that we have in would be for the 25 decision. The trial scheduled is for the 24 decision. The 25 decision is on hold until we get an answer from the Superior Court on the 24 exemption. Exemption reconsiderations, there's one for Calvary Chapel Bells Flats Church. They had a reconsideration letter mailed on March 2nd. They now have 30 days to file for a board of equalization for exemptions, or they can file directly with the Superior Court if they disagree with the exemption decision that was given by the assessor. Community development, last night they had a work session. They discussed comprehensive plan training and potential updates to case notices and case signs. The packet review for March 18th consisted of a rezoning case for Matroken Way, which is a rezone case by the city of Kodiak. They are adding a lift station to that location. I already told you that we interviewed and made a job offer, and it was accepted for a code enforcement officer. In engineering facilities, the solid waste contract committee has been rescheduled for March 17th. They have been reviewing an RFP. They've had it since February 27th. Quite a few E&F staff and I met with the Chamber of Commerce today to start the schedule for Community Cleanup Day. Community Cleanup Day will be held on May 2nd this year. Nothing has changed with the fuel spill assistance since those contracts were approved last week. We're signing contracts with NWFF and 3-Tier Alaska to get those projects started. At the hospital, there was a leak in a physical therapy room. Project staff went over to inspect the area and looked at historical drawings to assist in determining if it's going to be an asbestos contamination concern. We're going to be coordinating with the hospital will be coordinating with the contractor to do additional testing before they do any demolition or repairs to make sure exactly what they're dealing with. Out of the leachate treatment plant, the citric acid dosing skid replacement is underway. It needs to be upgraded. They provided a quote for just over $40,000, so we're going to move forward with that. Also at the landfill, or at least landfill related, the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan is going to be presented to the Solid Waste Advisory Board at their next meeting, which happens on Monday. And we're going to be doing landfill scale maintenance with Phillips Scale, and that is going to happen this Saturday. Nothing new at the KFRC or the only changes in small projects, our project manager, Cody Allen, went out to Port Lions Elementary School today to do an on-site check. Things are going very well. While he was out there, he also, if you tuned into anything with the ARB, you know we had some questions about the design around the belly band around the school. He did a little bit of destructive testing to find out that there was flashing behind that, so we'll be able to de-scope that project a little bit, so it won't be the $266,000 that I've been telling you. It'll be a little cheaper than that. I'm not promising a lot, but cheaper. The annex building, the ARB approved the drawing, so we'll be preparing an invitation to bid to advertise to get that out of the ground. The North Star boiler gun replacement is still waiting on parts. We have some upcoming meetings, the Solid Waste Contract Committee on the 17th and the Health Facilities Advisory Board on the 24th. Olivera, who will be presenting at our first agenda item, will also be covering some of the KCHE stuff at that HFAB meeting, which is something we haven't done. And then Dr. Smiley requested some information on foreclosures, which is that graph on the last page there that's blue and gray. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Woods?
Yeah, relating to we only have the one code enforcement officer, correct? The one spot for it?
Like a single code enforcement officer, yes.
Yeah, so just my question, I guess, was what training do they receive or how does their onboarding process work? That seems like kind of a lot to take on, it's fairly limited.
They are a peace officer, more than, so they don't carry a gun. If they do enter into a dangerous situation or even not comfortable knocking, like on an RV, we have the troopers come along with us. Usually, you know, there is a training program, and I do know this new person's going to have to go through it, but I can't think of what it is off the top of my head, but I will send an email and let you know what that is.
Yes, please, yeah, it just seems like, I know a lot of, having gone through several different flavors of law enforcement training, that depending on being cut loose with essentially no ability to have a field training seemed a little unusual and a somewhat anomalous position to be put in, so.
Any other concerns? Seeing none, let's move on to number 3, agenda items. The first item on our agenda is discussion of the Kodiak Community Health Center expansion request. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Dr. Smiley. The Executive Director for KCHC is here with us tonight to go over the information that's in your packet. Olivera, would you like more introduction than that, or you got it? Yeah. Okay.
Good evening, Assembly. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Olivera Wilson, and thank you, Amy, for the introduction. As she said, I'm the CEO at Kodiak Community Health Center. Kodiak Community Health Center, you guys all know that we are co-located with Providence. We are a federally qualified health center, which means that we would see anyone that walks through our doors, regardless of their insurance status, regardless of their ability to pay. So if you are not able to afford health care, we will still see you regardless. And I believe last year I was here with the Assembly, and I was talking to you guys, and what we were requesting was land from the borough. And that has really morphed to a different reason why I'm here today. Initially, we were seeking land from the borough, and it went through a lot of phases. Just to give a backstory, so we received congressionally directed spending funds, about $7.8 million from Senator Lisa Murkowski's office, and that money was given to us to expand our health center. We have outgrown our space. We're literally bursting out of our seams. And it's really affecting access in our community. And so we are at that time where we need to expand. And so we received the funding from Senator Murkowski's office. We try to figure out what we can do with that money. And so when I came here last year, we were asking for land, and that didn't really go anywhere because that fund was, even though it was given to us by Murkowski's office, it went through the Department of Health agency called the HRSA, so Health Resources and Services Administration, and they put a lot of conditions on that money. One of the conditions was we cannot start a new construction. And so that was why that conversation with the Assembly and the borough kind of was dead, because they said we can only use the money to expand or renovate a structure. And so after spending several months trying to figure out what we can do to continue to provide the services that we're very, very passionate about in doing in our community, we brought in an architect and thought about what if we were to add another story on our current space. Unfortunately, that took a lot of back and forth with architects, the original architects that built our space, and they had said that, you know, it was not built for adding another story. They said it wasn't impossible, but it will cost us a lot of money. And we decided to figure out how can we be smart about this expansion. If we cannot build from afresh, what can we do with the space we have? And so the architect we flew in came here and kind of surveyed the hospital, because they were also the ones that built the hospital, and said that we could kind of break that wall like when you're getting to the entrance, and build a 2-story on top of there. They said it would be the most effective, it would be cheaper for us to do that project. And so just a high-level estimate that they gave us was around $9.2 million. I'm actually shooting for around $11 million, just in case, to be on the safe side. And so that's really why we're here today, to discuss this with the Assembly and kind of share. That's, first of all, ask for support from the borough, and also seeking a notice of federal interest, which I will kind of explain what that is in a moment. But that's really where we're at now, and we have already put out an RFP, which request for proposals for an architect, just because we have a very short deadline to obligate that money, or we will have to give it back. I had invited Senator Murkowski to our health center 2 weeks ago, and she toured the health center and saw that we are really struggling. Like, everywhere is a storage space. We don't have space anymore. And so we are asking for a notice of federal interest. So what that means is essentially acknowledgement from the borough and support that federal money is going to be used to do the expansion project. And that would be on the property records that the borough would kind of sign. The building, the land will still be owned by the borough, but it would still have to have that federal interest, which also would show that that expansion project can only be used for the purpose that we built it for, one, and two, any form of transfer or, sales or anything for that expansion project that we will build will require approval from the federal government. So that essentially is what notice of federal interest is. And so we're here today to seek support and allow us to get the notice of federal interest, because that's also a condition that's tied to the funding that we received from the government. So I will pause in case there's what questions that the Assembly may have.
Any questions from the Assembly? Any questions from Bo or Jared?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Olivera. I can't see you, but I can hear you. So thank you. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with NFIs, and this might be more of a question for Amy. So can we go over a little bit in more detail what kind of constraints are put on the borough if we were to sign on with this notice of federal interest?
Madam Manager.
Thank you, through Mr. Smiley. So the property cannot be mortgaged, sold, or used for non-approved purposes without federal permission, is what an NFI does as a basic high-level overview.
So I have a question. Does that mean if we tried to sell the hospital, we couldn't do it without federal permission?
That is what it means.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jeremiah.
Oliver, did you have more of a presentation to continue? I did a lot of thinking and work on this project today, and I'm not sure if right now is the perfect time to present it or if you had more to talk about.
Yeah, I was gonna go over the document that's in the agenda, just to kind of talk about the option 1 and option 2, which I mentioned on a high level. We thought about building on top of our current space, and that was gonna be very expensive. That was gonna be really hard to do because, we're gonna be operating and they're gonna be trying to do renovation. And then we spent a lot of time with Providence and Big Prov, the health system, in trying to see what would work for them and also work for us. And we came to a unanimous conclusion that, option 2 would be better if we were to do the expansion project in front of our space, the entrance of our space, and then do a two-story, it's like a 5,000 square feet expansion project that we're kind of looking at. On our end, I know Providence did express some concerns about windows, because obviously windows are a huge thing in Kodiak. But the architects said they would design it in a way that, well, Providence, they're going to be part of the design process, first of all. And the architects are going to do their best to do it in a way that would not be very obstructive or give the best value to the both of us. I know they also mentioned elevators. Obviously, there's going to be more traffic with using elevators, shared elevators, and just with the high-level conversations we had, we kind of talked about how KCHC we're going to be willing to do our own part and provide in, payments or whatever is needed to service those elevators so that we're putting our own share in the utilization of that. And then the other thing that was talked about was parking, which I believe Mayor Jared talked about in the email he sent. I spoke with the architects about it, and they came to the health center, looked around it, and said that they found a way that it would make sense to add more stalls and essentially bridge those concerns about the parking. And so we are optimistic that this would work. It's going to be a very fast project because we do not want to give that money back. I hope that answers your question, but that's essentially the summary of what's here in the packet for what we're really looking at doing so we can continue providing the care that we're very passionate about in our community.
Follow up, Mr. Gardner?
I feel like my comment is going to throw a wrench in all of the gears, and we're going to end up repeating ourselves. So if you don't mind, I have something that I would really like to say. I spoke to a member of your board of directors today who's a longtime friend as well, and I'm so excited you're here because I wanted to reach out to you, but I didn't have an avenue to do that. One of the other items on our agenda today is discussing what to do with the old mental health buildings over here on Signal Hill. I did some research. They are both 8,488 square feet if you include the bottom and the top floor. So that's a total of nearly 17,000 square feet. If you guys were interested in working with us possibly to work out of those buildings, it also almost kills your parking problem. There's 16 to 20 parking spaces that are already there. It would also mitigate the issues with Providence's upgrades with DP6, the air chiller, et cetera, because as I understand, you guys are one of the big reasons why they're trying to upgrade that, because it's pushed everything up to capacity as well as it's something that they want. Your CDS grant should be perfectly good with renovating those buildings. They've already been, demolition and abatement has already been done throughout those buildings. And additionally, as we're going into the school budget here, and wondering where we're going to have to make some cuts. In my talk with your member of your board of directors, we were thinking maybe if there were some favorable lease terms with you guys over there, perhaps you could help fill some holes with behavioral health and even nursing issues with the school, and we could all kill or at least injure 3 or 4 birds with one stone. So I really wanted to present that to everybody and see what you all thought. And again, I didn't want us to be running over each other saying the same thing. So just really wanted to put that out there, and I have lots of notes and more information if you're interested.
Yes, I appreciate you saying that because, like I said, we were really stuck in trying to figure out what we can do. We were looking for where is a place that we can renovate that's, close enough and we can increase our footprint. And obviously 8,000 square feet, it's bigger than the 5,000
Times 2.
that we're trying to look at. And so I would really love to connect to hear more about what that will look like. I mean, yes, it will work for our grants condition because it's just gonna be a renovation. I would imagine probably would be cheaper because we're not like starting from the ground up for us. And the one thing I know that we have kind of expressed that we wanted was to bring, because we have an admin office that's on Mill Bay Road. We have just a few member of staff there, and we've been wanting to bring everyone close together. And so that's the only thing, but I think that that really, really sounds like a good idea. And I like what you said about the behavioral health. I mean, the needs assessment that we did with Providence showed that mental health is number 3, top 3 for Kodiak needs, behind housing. The mental health was there, and so I would love to have that conversation. I don't know how soon we can get that going, just, because we already have like high-level designs, but it sounds like something that I would love to talk about. So would it be you or Amy, who would I connect?
That would be the manager first,
Okay.
and then I guess the assembly would want to have a discussion about that, but it was just a light bulb moment for me. It seemed like it fit and checked all your boxes, and it gave you more square footage that you needed, and it was a way for all of our entities to kind of scratch each other's backs, spend less money, and let you use more of that CDS money towards renovating that building the way that
Oh,
you
yeah.
needed it to be. And I'm pretty familiar with that building. My mom used to manage it, so I think it would be a really, really good fit in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
And may I ask, where is it at again?
it's right over here. It's these two 8,488 square foot buildings just around the corner. We could walk over there after the
Okay,
meeting. And
yeah, wow, look at that.
Mr.
Awesome.
Woods?
And this is more of a question for Madam Manager. Do we know if there's already an NFI on the hospital building itself? Because that concern may render itself a moot point. Did we take any federal funding for that when it was built?
We took federal funding for the KCHC
There is,
portion.
yeah.
That's a Denali commission, but yeah, that was a multiple funding source adventure.
So just to clarify, there probably already is another NFI on there.
I do not know, but we could absolutely try to find out.
Because that concern may just eliminate itself if there's already one. It's kind of.
Any other questions from the assembly?
Yes, I have one, a couple,
Go
Dr.
ahead,
Smiley, if
Mr.
I may.
Whiteside.
So thank you for the information. Things that draw concern for me or create concern are rushed large capital projects. And this one certainly fits that bill, and that we were, as noted, you were looking for land initially. Now we have some large architectural plans in place. I appreciate Mr. Wood's question in that we might already have some federal restrictions on that space to begin with. But I'm curious, with your accelerated timeline, if this project is approved, where do you look to get the rest of that funding? It looks, if you're shooting for 11 million, you're several million short. How does that, do you have a plan to generate that revenue, and how does it affect your timeline?
Yeah, good question. I'll just talk first about the rushed project you mentioned. So it is a rushed project. It feels even more rushed, but once we can get the money obligated, so if we sign contracts with maybe an architect, contractors, then we are good. The timeline is just ticking for us to get it, obligated and signed to a purpose. So I wanted to add that. And then for the funding, like you said, we're going to need sources to kind of bridge the gap. And so our plan now is, with the project being scoped at around $10 million, we will be looking at $2.2 million. We have donors that have expressed huge interest in funding the project for us, but they want to see a design. It's like that for all the funders. You gotta show them the architectural design before they're like, okay, you're really ready and we're gonna fund the project for you. But on our end, we are already talking with banks to get a line of credit. So once we have the line of credit, we're able to move forward with the designs, and then we can seek funding from Rasmussen Foundation, funding from Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority. They want to fund the project, but they want to see plans that are ready to go. And so that's kind of our plan to, that's kind of our plan to bridge the gap of the sources of funds. And that's also a condition of the grant money, because they want to see other sources of funds for the total project.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more, Mr. Smiley, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So also curious about the, let's see, how do I kind of lost my train of thought there. Thinking about the design of the project, I think some people touched on it lightly. I believe you even mentioned windows, but I'm sensitive to the fact that if we modify Providence, as I understand it, in any way, we may trigger a full seismic upgrade for that building, which could result in tens of millions of dollars in expenditures. That's probably my top one or two concerns about this project. I guess, I don't know, Madam Manager, if you wanted to help address that question. I know none of us have probably dove into those plans to that level yet, but that certainly comes to mind in that. I remember our architect and engineering firm that initially brought some projects to our attention for Providence mentioned if we move one window or one door, it triggers that seismic upgrade for the building. So that's definitely a concern I have with this large project.
That is a great question, Assemblymember Whiteside. Those seismic regulations are specifically attached to the 1964 wing. As long as we're not altering that wing, we wouldn't trigger that. If we do trigger that, I think the cost estimate we got was around $30 million for seismic upgrades. So as you can see, it would not be a good payoff to alter that. And so actually, Patricia and I looked at those plans today and saw that those lines were aligned with each other and had a little bit of a moment to make sure that we weren't going to trigger the seismic issues that we had in the 64 wing, and the way that they're designing is not supposed to disturb that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Woods.
Yeah, just to clarify it, I mean, I may have missed it in the packet somewhere. When does an obligation need to be made by you guys?
September.
Okay, so it's quick, but it's not unbelievably quick, so thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I have one, Dr. Smiley.
Yes, Dr. Griffin.
Thank you. One thing I think we should think about too, whether there's an addition to Providence or there's a renovation of the old mental health buildings. Yes, that I think that might increase our asset value, but we also need to think about the long-term liability. Adding more means that there's, kind of an unfunded maintenance obligation that we might have, because it's going to be part of a borough-owned structure. So I'm in favor of healthcare expansion for sure, but I think that's just one thing for us to keep in mind if we're moving forward with this agreement, is to think about those long-term repair and replacement responsibilities that will fall for the bigger project will largely fall on the borough. If I'm understanding that correctly, Amy?
Yes. So as the building owner, we have that one fund, the R&R fund, that takes care of all the projects and all the maintenance for the entire hospital complex. So we would absolutely have to look in what additional costs we would expect for maintenance and upkeep of any of the parts of hospital, and then how we would cover those costs.
Mr. Ames.
It appears to me that if this project goes through, we would probably have to do some sort of lease arrangement change. I don't know when our lease at the moment lines up, but we'd have to do a new lease for the present space and the expansion, no matter where it is, to make sure those costs and things are covered, correct?
Yes, the current lease payment is $120 a year, and that's the way that that was set up when that funding came together. And then KCHC has its own agreement with Providence on how they pay for their share of the utilities. That's a agreement between Providence and KCHC. So the operating costs are covered by Providence, and the $120 a year certainly did not take into account any kind of maintenance or upkeep when that decision was made.
Mr. Gardner.
Just want to iterate that if we take a close look at that mental health situation, you seem a little excited about it. I feel like it mitigates nearly every single issue on the table, so just want to throw that out there.
Okay. Let's move on then to item B. The FY 2027 budget discussion for select special revenue funds, service areas without active boards, and enterprise funds. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Dr.
Oh,
Smiley. I will be
Madam
joined
Fiscal
by
Director.
our Finance Director for this presentation. So we're going to walk through the funds in numerical order, and we're going to, I'll just refer to them by page number as we walk through. And usually this is the point in the year where we have the discussion on how detailed you would like us to go.
Is that a question of the board?
That is a question of the board, yes.
Is there any thought on that at this point, or do you want to get buried in numbers first? Mr. Johnson.
I think a high-level overview at this stage in the budget process would be the appropriate way to go. As we get a little closer, maybe it might be the will of the board or the assembly to hear further detail, but I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze to go line by line, especially at this stage.
Any other concerns about a squeeze? No. Then let's have the high-level look.
Okay, so we're going to start with Fund 254, which is our Airport Fire Protection Service. This is the fund, we have a contract from fiscal year '24. The payment of these collected taxes actually go to the Women's Bay Fire Department. So this is the area that's right outside of the airport. It's not just a clever name. All of those buildings, they pay tax. They just pay the area-wide mill rate. That area-wide, that's not true. They do pay their area mill rate. But this special mill rate that is assessed there, you can see the actual amount in '25 was just over $20,000. So far in 2026, it's $23,922, and because of the increased assessed values, we are expecting just under $26,000 for 2027, and that money supplements Women's Bay Fire Department, and they're very thankful for it. Anyone have any questions about that? Okay, so the first one was so easy. All right, the second one on page 2 is Fund 260, the Woodland Acres Street Light Service. These are an additional mill rate for those people in the area simply to pay for electricity to run those lights. In fiscal year '27, we are budgeting or expecting that cost to be around $7,630. And that simply just pays for electricity. So if you too want lights where you live and you don't have them, you could ask all of your neighbors to just pay a little bit of money, and then you could have lights too. Any questions? Look, we're off to such a good start. I'm really glad that these are first. Fund 261 is the same thing for the Trinity Island Streetlight Service. Smaller area, less people paying in. We're budgeting $2,600 for fiscal year '27. Any questions? Look, we're just flying now. Fund 273 is our opioid class action settlement. We're on page 4 now. You can see on the left, there are many distributors listed for people who are paying out for the opioid lawsuit settlement. We have decided as a borough to put this money into a fund, and that's where we have paid out to programs like Kodiak Reentry, the Kodiak Area Mentor Program, Brother Francis Shelter, and KCHC have all gotten a portion of those funds as they come in. That has been decided last year in our nonprofit funding. This one is a little bit harder to budget for simply because when those individual companies are paying in, they can choose to pay 5 years of settlement at once, or they can divide that in and pay once a year or whatever they can afford. So sometimes we can figure out a pattern of what they've been doing, and sometimes it's just a surprise. We just got a note the other day that we're going to be getting $11,000 from Walgreens, like literally 2 days ago. So we'll update those as we see them, but those all kind of have a purpose and a way to spend them now through our nonprofit funding. So we'll keep that as up to date as we have it. Any questions on opioids? Not the actual ones, but the settlement fund. All right, good. You have to throw some humor in there, guys. Come on. All right. Fund 276 is our facilities fund. Our facilities fund has a lot of interest every year. We've included from 2022 to where we're at right now in 2026, and you can see that that amount varies quite significantly. By code, we are allowed to use 85% of interest earnings every year from that. We, for the fiscal year 27 budget, have not used any of that interest, but it is there in the event that we need it. So we expect to have around, we don't actually have an amount there, but it'll be somewhere around that $1.6 million. And we've had various conversations at the assembly level about this fund. It was when school bond debt first started not getting funded that we used, this is when we raised the motor vehicle tax. This is when we started taking money out of interest for this fund. There was an assembly member who did some quick math and were like, this fund should be this big. Why isn't it this big? This is why it's not this big. It's all of the use of the interest throughout the year. So that money is there, and either we can leave it in that fund and let that fund grow, or we can use it in the annual budgets. So that's just because of that comment that someone said, why is that fund so small? We're leaving it there, but that money is there in the event that we need it.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. What's the principal in that fund?
I don't know offhand, but I can get you that information.
Okay, and what's the investment strategy on it?
It's in our code. There's a policy that I reviewed with the assembly, but there wasn't any desire at that time to adopt a policy, and that was to kind of bifurcate our investments into a long-term strategy versus the strategy the GFOA recommends, which is the shorter one, because most of them don't have long-term funds like this. So right now I'm kind of stuck with code saying it's a shorter term strategy.
Thank you. May I follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's what I seem to recall as well. I would really like to bring that back to the table for conversation. I think it's long overdue that the fund is set up in a way that it's set up to be a long-term fund with the assembly limited to only 85% of the investment earnings. If we invested it more aggressively, that money could be doing a lot more for us. I understand the limitations on why you can't, but I think that's something we should be taking for action as an assembly to, as you said, bifurcate the long-term investment strategy and try to get some better returns.
Yeah, and just for anyone who's new to this conversation, governments, the short-term operational type funds, the ones that are 5 years and less, those are, for the most part, involuntarily acquired from taxpayers. So the primary purpose of those funds is safety and liquidity, not investability. And so these funds aren't part of that conversation. So in the past, they've talked about maybe peeling those off and handing them over to an investment company. But after looking at the fees, they're like, okay. So, change is good.
Any other concerns? Continue.
All right. The next page is page 6. This is Fund 277. This is tourism development. This is our bed tax revenues. There really is an accommodations tax on all short-term rentals under 30 days. You can see the history of how much has come in. We have it in there for on-the-road system versus off-the-road system. Of course, everything that happens inside of the city of Kodiak goes to the city of Kodiak. The only change really this year is you're gonna see uncontracted services, you'll see your charge of $3,500. That is the short-term rental license for the use of our Deckard Technologies short-term rental software, so we can track that and try to get a handle on that. You'll also see we have traditionally since 22 contracted with the Kodiak Convention and Visitors Bureau doing business as Discover Kodiak for the tune of $75,000, so that's in there as well. Any questions on tourism fund? Okay. We're gonna go to page 8. That is the commercial passenger vessel fee fund. The state of Alaska collects a fee for the first few ports a cruise ship visits when it's inside of the state of Alaska. From that fee, 50% of it goes to the Kodiak Island Borough and 50% of that goes to the city of Kodiak. There are very strict rules on how that money can be used. Please reference Juneau and all of their case law if you want to know what happens when you don't follow those rules. Those funds can only be used for the betterment of the ship, not cruise passengers, but to make the pier or the brow or whatever it is. I did dig deep, Dave, for my Coast Guard words there. To make their experience better in your port. The most recent thing that we did was partner with the city of Kodiak to add those Portland loos to the cruise ship pier. We helped pay for some of the installation of those. Otherwise, we are limited in what those funds can actually be used for, and it will likely be a partnership project with the city of Kodiak to do something for cruise ship piers or the pier where they come in when they lighter in, something along those lines.
Mr. Woods?
So just for correction, could that money be then used in conjunction with the city to do repairs on, like Pier 3, for example? I know they've got one of their main cleats ripped out.
No, because that's not cruise ship.
Pier 3, is it not cruise ship?
Pier 3 is Matson, Pier 2 is cruise ship.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Mr. Gardner?
In your experience with Discover Kodiak and all the cruise ships, can you just enlighten me on the way I'm reading this is you've got an overarching estimate on how much you're going to get for a vessel tax for each cruise ship, and then your actual. Can you give me some insight on what an individual cruise ship pays for moorage when they do come in?
For moorage?
Well, for
a lot, but that all goes, well, Mr. Johnson
I've-
probably
yeah,
knows
you
a lot
know.
better than I would.
I've always wondered this.
The average revenue generated from a cruise ship moorage vicinity of $16,000.
Any other concerns? Madam Manager, go ahead.
Thank you. Our next fund is debt service. For fiscal year 27, the Kodiak Island Borough owes $5,244,847 for school bond debt. Of that amount, $3,609,432 is eligible for reimbursement by the state. This budget is built off of a 75% reimbursement amount of $2,707,074. That is 75% is what the state legislature has passed to be reimbursed for the past 2 years, although this year we only got 69% of that. But fear not, I have not given up, and I really do believe that DEED is going to give us that $254,000 at the end of the fiscal year. So that's a decision on how much risk the assembly wants to take when we're building the budget on what our revenue looks like. If we want to shoot for the stars and think that the state is going to give us 100% reimbursement, we can put in that $3,609,432 number. And it's a difference, obviously, of about $1 million. So it makes a big difference in how much we're calculating and how much risk we're willing to take. So when you look at your what you're seeing in front of you, the state shared revenues, the number we have put in is 2,707,000. And I just wanted you to know that that is 75%. So there is, if we wanted to budget for 100%, another $902,358 that could, but that's that risk, how much risk you want to take on that. We have in the second page on page 10, you can see all of the different bonds, the principal and the interest that we have on all of those bonds, and you can see what we've paid over the years on all of those bonds, so you can get an idea of what that looks like. There is good news on some of them because you can see some of them falling off in fiscal year 27, which will be amazing. On page 11, when you get to all of our, the very last line, you'll see a number, $1,820,923. That is the amount needed to balance the account. So that's the money that we will need to take in from either property tax, or if we wanted to use that facility fund interest, or we have choices of where that comes, but that's the amount that will have to be brought into that fund to cover the amount that is not covered from the state on school bond debt replacement. That's an important number. We're going to see that number later again, right, Dora? If everything adds up, and it does, because she already showed me.
Right.
Yes.
So the debt service fund is a unique fund. It's in a different category than the other ones. So because we follow, and this fund is part of, it complies with the IRS arbitrage rules, should we collect more in 1 year than arbitrage allows us to keep in that account, it is deducted from what we would charge the taxpayers in the next year. And conversely, if we decide we're going to budget for 100% and we only get 75 and this fund has a deficit, then that's additional money that we would then charge the taxpayers for debt service the following year. But I can't keep more than 1/12 of 6 months of bond principal payments in that fund according to the arbitrage IRS rules. So it's not a fund that accumulates a lot of money. So.
Okay.
Yes, you will have to Google arbitrage later. I'm just reflecting back. I saw some faces up there, and I remember when I was up there and Dora did this exact same thing, and it just does not make sense. So if you have more questions, please ask. Arbitrage is something that is not something that people talk about every day, and you may have never even heard of it. So ask questions, and we're happy to fill in the gaps.
I'll be happy.
Google AI can answer that.
I'll be
It
happy
can.
to pass that
Yep.
sheet off, the calculation sheet and the requirements if the assembly's willing, wants to see it.
I think individual members might, but go ahead, Mr. Carton.
I have questions, but better suited to outside of the assembly chambers. Hopefully you can find some time to educate me, but thank you.
Any other questions? Can we continue on then?
Yes. All right, the next fund we're going to look at is on page 12. It is Fund 530, the Solid Waste Disposal Fund. This is a large fund, and it is broken up in a couple of different ways. We only get revenue in, obviously, from the solid waste portion, what comes through the Baylor building and across the scale. But when you look at expenses in a minute, you're going to see all of the Baylor expenses, and you'll also see all the leachate treatment plant expenses. And there is no revenue to offset the cost of leachate treatment plant. So there are some. So there are individual dump fees when people come across the scale. You can see what that number looks like for 2027. We are budgeting $620,000, and then there's the Alaska waste fees when they come across. And for 27, we are budgeting $3 million for that. The Coast Guard obviously uses the landfill as well. We're budgeting $375,000 in revenue for them. We do a lot of waste screenings. We would like to do less. We're budgeting $20,000 for that. And metals, we take in a lot of metals, and then we have to ship off a lot of metals, but we're budgeting for $90,000 in revenues. And most of these numbers, because we just have no idea what's going to happen in actuality are done off averages. That's how there's no great forecasting mechanism for the landfill. It is just assuming that people will behave the way that people have behaved over the last 5 years. Let's see. Once we move on to page 13, we're getting into expenses. You can see all of the different things. We have the normal things like salaries, overtime, cell phones. When you get down to professional services, you'll see that we started to take a lot of money out. And then also, if you look at the right-hand column, the fiscal year 27 versus fiscal year 26 on expenses, you're going to see a lot of negative numbers. In the past, there's been like, oh, I think we'll do this, let's put $75,000 there. Oh, I think we'll do this, let's put $100,000 there. Instead of doing that this year, we wanted to take all of that out, and if we do need to do stuff, we'll do it in the quarterly budget amendments, or everything will come through you via contract instead of just having the what-ifs in there. So you're going to see a lot of money coming out, which I think is always a good thing. We do have money that we left in there. Obviously, our contracted services are mostly for fuel spill cleanup, so those are the contracts that were passed over the last couple of weeks with 3 Tier Alaska and NWFF. We also have construction services in there. That is, this year was for Jacobs Engineering. We're still spending down the rest of that leachate treatment plant. No, this is going to be, well, I wrote Jacobs, but it's not the leachate treatment plant because that'll be in the other part of expenses. So I don't know what that is for sure. We'll figure that one out if there's a question. Oh, the oil. Yes, thank you. We use recycled oil to heat the Baylor facility building, and that is that. Thank you, Dora. That's why we pay you the big bucks. One thing that I would like to note is that we do spend quite a bit of money in our senior citizen support, and that gives our senior citizens here in Kodiak a lower price. You won't see a 2026 actual amount because we don't get that amount from Alaska Waste until the end of the fiscal year. And one thing we should also talk about is our donated trash disposal. There is a cost for community cleanup and allowing Threshold to take stuff there. We allow Salvation Army and St. Mary's to bring stuff and don't charge them, and so that adds up. So the fund is not a very healthy fund, and we're still managing to do those partnerships, but that is something that we should discuss if that fund continues to struggle. Okay. There are all of the costs of, like we have with every department for staff training, heating, fuel, snow removal, all of that is located on page 14 for the landfill side. And then on page 15, we jump into the leachate treatment plant. That's at the bottom of page 15. On page 15, you'll see the landfill total for 2027 is $2,984,286. And then we jump into salaries and for the leachate treatment plant. When we move into page 16, you'll see it's the same categories as the landfill. These are expensive plants to run. A lot of costs around laboratory services because everything that we test has to get sent off island to be tested, and it has to get rushed. And then when it gets to where it's going, it has to be, a courier has to come pick it up and get it to the lab within a certain amount of time in order for it to be considered good. E&F staff spent some time trying to find closer labs so we could spend less money and less rushing. So we're working on that. On page 17, you'll see for fiscal year 27, we're budgeting $1,328,648 for the leachate treatment plant in total, and our total for the entire landfill is $4.3 million. The landfill is expensive. I tried to trade it the other day for the At Swampsea, Assemblymember Gardner and I were at a dinner with somebody, and we were trading things, and I tried to trade the landfill for the police department, and no one would take it. No one took it.
Just a quick reminder, we're into the enterprise funds now, and this is not taxpayer dollars. This is based on user fees. So,
This is one of the reasons that regional solid waste management plan is going to be important as we move into the future and discuss ways that we can make landfill operations cheaper, whether it's a incineration or a different way to treat leachate, or, for example, instead of buying filters from the eastern part of Europe, I found some in China that were $300,000 cheaper. I don't have shipping yet, but we got a quote for our normal filters that we use, and there was $69,000 just in shipping and $24,000 in tariffs. So the leachate treatment plant is really expensive. So conversation for another day, but I do believe we should get some people much more knowledgeable than the people who are looking at the landfill now, me, and figure out like a better way to do what we're doing out there. Because as you can see, we increased tip fees or per ton fee this year, and we'll likely have to do it again next year to cover the cost of that. So that's a bigger conversation that I won't bother you with right now.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
We were having trouble with the effluent from the leachate treatment plant not meeting standards. Is it still not meeting standards?
It is still not meeting standards. We're working with Jacobs on that pretreatment plant to get that to do what it was designed to do. It is not. Seema and I went out for a tour earlier in the week and went through all of that, and the pretreatment plant wasn't even turned on. When you turn it on, it just is a huge alarm.
I have a friend who's a engineer for that kind of stuff, civil engineer. And she has been to the leachate treatment plant with me previously. I think it might be a good idea to try to get her to come again, or someone who's a civil engineer to look at it. Because it seems like we've got the right structure, but maybe not the right things going on in it.
Yes, I'm also looking, there's a company called Heartland that's from the lower 48 that is building low temperature evaporation units where you run your leachate through, it drops out the solids and the water, like 98.5% of the water goes away.
Go for it.
Well, let's find a price point before we say that. But that could be, I mean, instead of the $350,000 membranes at the end of the system are about to become $453,000. And they said, well, you're going to have to switch because we're not making these. And those membranes last 2 years.
Yeah.
And so it's just such an expensive process. So I did a deep dive this week on alternatives, and the people reach out to you right away. And I found out that in April, there's one of those thermo plants getting launched in the Kenai Peninsula. And so I will figure out how to get there and see how that works, because I think that could save us a lot of money in the future.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any
And
other-
on that happy note, are we ready for the hospital fund? All right. Page 18 is Fund 540, the hospital fund. When we think about accounting and funds, for this fund in particular, I want you to know that this is not a cash basis fund. This is an accrual fund. And it's going to become very obvious because you're going to see that through the rent payments, we take $1,384,272 a year. They're paying $115,356 a month in rent for that facility. When we get over to the amount that goes into R&R, on the next page, let's get you to, it's line 450.436. You're going to see a number of $283,861 going to the R&R, and you're going to say, Amy, I thought we were putting $1.38 million into that account. Where's the other money going? Well, the next section down in depreciation, government finance has us depreciating our buildings, our improvements, our machinery and our equipment. So depreciation is a little over $1 million, and we have to make our funds balance. And so that is the only number that we can put in R&R, but that's not, the depreciation is not cash. We won't take $1 million and put it in a magical depreciation fund. It will go into R&R, but the way that accounting works and having to require balanced budgets, we have to account for that depreciation. Previous assemblies have asked that to get taken out. It makes things very confusing. Do not do it, because that's there are weird things happening outside. So we don't have anything in there in the 26 actual. You're going to see that in a couple of places for our buildings, because as we switched insurance companies to ARPA, you're going to see this in KFRC especially. ARPA. Oh, I really want to say sorry, it's APRA, not ARPA, but I think ARPA is ingrained in my brain. Our new insurance company went in and reevaluated the value of all of our buildings, so you're going to see different, on the things where we're paying insurance, you're going to see them go up quite a bit because they added a lot of value to our insurance. So we are getting that money. It is going into R&R. It will be added to that fund. We have planned that with our projects. But when you look at this and you only see that 283,000, that's the way we do accounting, but that's not how much money goes into R&R. Confusing? Okay.
Any questions? Okay.
That's a tough one. All of that money goes into R&R, except for, I did not mention, there's $40,319. And according to that contract, that's for an admin fee. There has been discussion in the past about leaving that in the fund. We have several staff members' salaries that are allocated. If we change that and we leave that in the fund, that becomes, those salaries will then be paid by property tax. And so that makes, that affects how much money the taxpayers are paying. This does not.
Is that it? Mr. Gardner?
Can you clarify that 40,319 a little bit for me? Are you saying that's allocated for a salary that doesn't actually exist?
No,
I'm sure I heard
it
this wrong.
absolutely exists. The lease agreement that we have with the hospital allows an admin percentage. It's that number out of the payments that they pay. So the E&F director, the manager, Dora printed me out a whole sheet somewhere that shows me all of them. Just one moment, please.
So this is basically removing it from the fund and crediting it toward the general fund departments to reduce the salary that those general funds are being expensed to the taxpayers.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay.
I had that same question today, so I had to have a printout. Any other questions on the hospital fund? I think we talk about the hospital fund a lot because of HFAB and how many projects are happening, and so we get to see that one a little bit more often. All right, page 20 to 29, we're on the home stretch. Fund 545 is the long-term care center. The long-term care center lease brings in $1,043,628 a year, which is fantastic. It does not have a separate R&R fund right now, but that in HFAB meetings, that is something that we're talking about to set that up so that we can use that money for maintenance. That money is staying inside of that fund. It hasn't gone anywhere else. And when we do that lease update, we will make it so they can access that fund for the maintenance of that building as it was intended to be. Any questions on long-term care? Page 22 is the Fund 55 for the KFRC. We do not, there is a number missing on this. There is no PERS on behalf payment. That's, we saw that today in our review. That number will have to get added. back in there, there's a 0 in there for fiscal year '27, and you'll see the '27 versus '26 budget has a negative $5,425. Those numbers will just reverse, and then it will be 0 change from the year before. Unless Dora makes that noise again, and then it will not be.
That PERS amount is based on salaries, so right now, as the salary information stands, it would be $5,958, because salaries have increased over time. And then these numbers, all the enterprise funds have a PERS on behalf amount if they have salaries in them. So if the salary information changes, that number will change as well. That number is the difference between the actuarials set that with the state of Alaska, and municipalities only pay 22% of that. So that difference between the 29.84, which it is next year, and the 22% we pay is revenue to us, and that's what the PERS on behalf is.
That's one of the bills in the state legislature right now, too, where they're talking about allowing that board to adjust that either up or down on an annual basis. So there's a lot of anger around that, so I'm thinking that won't pass. But that would pass more of that cost on to the local government instead of the state, so we wouldn't be stable at our 22%. Okay, this fund has loan interest, which is a revenue which does not make sense until you find out that GSA is paying us from a loan. They're paying us just about $14,000 a month, and they have been all the way since when this building was constructed. And so we get interest from those loan payments. Their final loan payment will be in March of 2029. And then Dora taught me about GASB 87 today, which is deferred revenue for the entirety of the lease. Note that when we talk about rents and royalties, we have a lot of different sources of income through the NOAA lease. Their NOAA lease is about $55,418 a month. That goes up and down based on actual costs. And we have a reset built into that lease that happens every 5 years, that they use the average of the last 5 years' costs on. And then as we move forward, if they're not paying enough, they will pay more over the next 5 years. If they're paying too much, they pay less over the next 5 years. And Dora has to report all of the utilities and use and expenses to GSA, which has been a challenge when GSA decided that it wasn't going to have any employees for a few months there. We also are getting money from the Natural Resources Conservation, that's the Kodiak Soil and Water Conservation District, the Fish and Game lease, which has a percentage that it goes up every year built into the lease. KFRC reception revenue, that is when we rent out that space, the conference rooms or people have events there. And we have a lab space that's being leased by the Kodiak Regional Aquaculture Association for $1,600 a month. Do you want to tell them about the Gatsby 87 net present value? Okay, that's that last line, if anyone has questions.
If anyone has questions, they can come see me and I can give you all kinds of information on it. But if you don't have to, I wouldn't.
In accordance with the lease contract with GSA, we are required to have a maintenance person at that building. We do have a maintenance person staying there. NOAA pays about 75% of that salary. As a matter of fact, NOAA pays about 75%. It's in accordance with their percentage of actual floor space for everything that happens at that building. We don't have a way, if NOAA was using 95% of the electricity, they're still paying 75%. There's no mechanism built in to make sure that that's happening. Or if they were only using 35% of the electricity, they're still paying 75% across the board on all of the utilities. In accordance with that GSA lease. The KFRC fund goes all the way through page 25. It lists out all the different things. It's longer and it looks different. This fund is built off of federal government form, which is Form 1217, which breaks down everything heating, electrical, plumbing. It has a lot more categories because Form 1217 requires that. And so it's a much longer budget thing. When you're looking at the other things, they're much more consolidated. We have that same issue with depreciation on this building. You'll see a $729,705 amount coming out. That doesn't actually come out, but that is how depreciation is taken care of. This also is an enterprise fund that takes care of itself. Anyone have any questions about KFRC? Okay. That brings us to Fund 556, which is our resource court apartments. Wow. We have 6 apartments in that building. 5 of them are being rented. We have 3 one-bedroom apartments that are being rented and 2 two-bedroom apartments that are being rented. That's where our $88,200 a year comes out. The 6th apartment is open to for use by borough contractors and people coming and doing work for us. We're able to save a lot on per diem by offering them a place to stay, especially in the summer. And they also sometimes, if they have insurance and a proper driver's license, we let them drive our cars as well, which saves us a ton of money in the summer. So it's nice to have that available. For expenses, you'll see a little bit of a salary. That's a part of Will's salary, who is over at the KFRC. That little $6,000 chunk is what is allocated for his salary. You can see what we've purchased over the last few years. We buy commercial grade appliances, so commercial washers and dryers. Our staff is very talented in fixing refrigerators, and we kind of fix everything as much as we can until it absolutely dies, and then we'll replace it. But it's great to have new sources here in town where we can buy appliances right here in town and not have to pay shipping and worry about getting them here. And so we're thankful for those options. We haven't had any major things happen over there, so there's not a lot showing up in expenses. Does anyone have any questions about apartments? They were originally built for visiting biologists and scientists to come work at the KFRC. As that kind of stopped as the years went by, we have rented them out to the school district or Providence, or there is one very lucky non-related to Providence or the school district human who has one of those apartments right now.
Mr. Wood?
Yeah, my understanding was those were being heavily used by NOAA for quite some time for observers coming in and out. Is that no longer the case?
No, Noah.
Well, historically, they were originally going to be used for graduate students and visiting professors at what used to be called FITC, is now the Kodiak Seafood and Marine Science Center. But with changes at UAF, which was the home campus for FITC, that stopped, so.
All right, if there's no questions on the apartment, we are on to our last fund, which is Fund 560.
The fun one.
This is our 911 service. This is a pass-through, all except for $1,500 that goes to assessing for addressing for the call center at the police station. What we do is the money comes into us, we gather it into account, we give it to the city. It's a pretty simple account. Through all of the budgets that we looked at tonight, and there are a lot, our 2026 amended budget total for these funds was $17,440,704. For fiscal year 27, they are $13,973,769. And so it's just under $3.5 million less in expenses. So I hope that when you're seeing all of the lines on the right, you can see that we're trying to take out the, I don't want to call it fluff, because I really do believe that people thought they were going to get to those projects, but we're trying to have a more realistic expectation with how we are planning projects. And because the projects office we're trying to get to 5 years. We're currently at 3, which is 3 more years than we've ever been in the past. We're able to look at these funds and know what we're going to do a little bit better and more accurately than we have in the past. And I promised earlier that that $1.8 million was gonna, but they don't see that on their sheet, so it matches. Anyways, it matches.
I have a question on the cheat sheet that I got. It says that we're going to talk also about service areas without active boards. Are we going to talk about that?
We did. That is that's the lighting districts
Oh.
and the airport fire district. Those are considered service districts, but they don't have boards.
Oh, I thought you meant road service districts that didn't have people running for office.
No, we're going to talk about all the road service areas at the next work session, whether or not they have full boards or not, because those are boards that are affecting all the people who live in those areas, regardless if they have people running or not.
Okay,
And they all
thank you.
have people. There's just one that doesn't officially have a chair.
Okay. Any questions from the assembly? Any questions online? Nope. Okay. We can ditch the small numbers.
These are big. Those enterprise funds are big numbers with expensive, but we're working on alternatives.
Thank you, Dora.
Good point. All right, moving on. Do we want to take a break now, or? Let's take a 5-minute break, or is it 7?
Depends on who's in charge.
5 is good for me.
Sorry, Jeremiah. Promise I'm not trying to take you up.
5-minute break.
Can you guys make sure all your mics are on?
I got it. Whereas the cruise ship passenger.
1 minute.
It's not free, they don't want anything to do with it.
No, I understand.
I'll be curious to see what happens with the wild source expanding. I think, I was part of it.
I'd be up all night if I did that.
I'm sorry, sir?
I'd be up all night if I did that.
Well, I've been up since 4:30 with my 2-year-old, so
Well, then you don't need it.
I will have no problem falling asleep, I guarantee you.
I know the original design was this, and then I'm not sure if it's some weirdness with funding and timing. Grant money and timing. That's what it is.
Okay, we're back at, I guess it's number C. Discussion of the Signal Hill Mental Health Facility buildings. Madam Manager.
Thank you. The demolition and abatement of work on the mental health buildings has been successfully completed. This phase involves stripping 2 existing apartment buildings down to their structural framing, including the removal of all interior finishes, plumbing systems, electrical components, conduits, and piping. If you haven't seen pictures of inside of those buildings, it is literally 2x4s and some stairs to get you up to the 2nd floor. The scope also included demolition of the existing mechanical laundry building and a removal of an underground fuel storage tank. In October of '24, staff presented the Assembly with Jensen Yerba Wall's rough order of magnitude cost estimates. In October of '24, the ROM for abatement and demolition was $1.35 million. The actual cost for this phase totaled $1.9 million. The ROM for the future reconstruction in-place project was estimated at $8,125,680. With the abatement and demolition phase now complete, the borough has 2 structurally sound building shells remaining. The next step is for the Assembly to determine the intended future use and direction of these facilities. I had 2 options, but we're going to add a third because of Assemblymember Gardner. One is request that our contracted architect and engineering firm, Jensen Yerba Wall, provide an updated design proposal for renovation of those structures in their current locations, or request that they give us a proposal to demolish the buildings entirely. Or 3, hold and talk to KCHC and see if there's any interest. We did do a pretty exhaustive search earlier, talking to nonprofits, Kihawk, Hannah, anyone that might have an interest in those buildings, to put those buildings to use before we did the entire abatement project. We actually did talk to KCHC about that, but it was a different director. And at that time, they did not want to have their campus that far away from the hospital. Given the price of construction, though, and what they have found out since then, they might very well change their mind on location. So if you want to continue into this, Patricia is here tonight. If you have questions, or if there's something we can help facilitate your conversation, or if you just want to give direction for us to hold on a second and talk to KCHC to see if there's interest, we can absolutely do that as well.
Mr. Woods.
Yeah, I think talking to KCHC might be a good life choice.
Mr. Gardner.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I love this. I'm super excited about it. It nails a ton of different things on the head. And speaking, I don't want to use his name because I hadn't said I was going to, but speaking to somebody else on their board of directors, you know, the possibility, again, of giving them a favorable lease and watching what happens with the school district budget and being able to shift a little bit of that nursing and behavioral health situation over to KCHC and kind of scratch each other's back. I mean, I just love this idea. So, and Oliveira, by the way, seemed turbo excited. So I would love to see where this went.
So it sounds like we'll engage with Oliveira a little bit more and see if that's a possibility.
I have several questions about it, though. I guess we have to find out what kinds of facilities KCHC would need in terms of the weight on floors and stuff like that to see if the floors would handle it.
I believe that would be their architect's job to
Okay.
see what that building could structurally handle. There are some issues that we already know about when that building was altered before and stairways and doors were put in. It would appear that they cut through some structural beams that
Oh,
caused some
good,
concern when we tore those apart. But I would assume that would be up to their team to make a decision on what was good and what was needed for that space.
And you mentioned 2x4s. Is it actually 2x4s or could it be 2x6s?
I think it's 2x4s.
It's gotta be 2x6.
You gotta have 2x6.
Some of both.
You know, you're right, what's that, 70s? 60s,
Yeah,
68,
yeah.
could be 2x4.
But the architects can tell us that. Mr. Woods?
Not to harp on this, but the potential benefit for increasing our behavioral health capacity in Kodiak, as I have to interact with it every day at my day job. We're seeing wait lists right now anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks to get somebody something as simple as an assessment. It's heinous. So yeah, if the secondary benefits of that would be likely to be fairly substantial.
Any comments from online?
Yeah, just a couple. One question for Amy, and I think we've talked about this separately, but just for the assembly and the public, those buildings we can wait and we can wait a pretty long time and have these discussions with the KCHC without exposing the buildings to any further wear and tear.
Okay.
Was that? Yes. I don't know if that was a question, but yes, I agree with you, Mayor Griffin. We have had some damage with high winds, but no more than anyone else that has a house here, right? So we might change our methodology of screwing the siding back on if we thought that siding was going to be reused in the future. But yes, they right now they appear to be structurally sound and not leaking.
Well, it seems like the number that's important is the September deadline for encumbrance of the money, right?
Absolutely.
So,
And a couple more things. So I believe when KCHC, when they were in negotiations with Kodiak College and UAA for some land over there, if I recall correctly, some of the sticking points were the size of the lease that they would be required to have. And then also we were talking about, or I say the university was talking about kind of what Jeremiah was talking about, exchanging, or exchanging some of the lease for added health benefits for college students or for, or for something like that. And the board was not interested in that particular context. Doesn't mean that it won't work for this context, but I think they've had those discussions before, so it'd be interesting to see how and if their attitude has changed about those things. And I bring that up because, again, as I mentioned before, right, we're also committing ourselves to long-term maintenance of those buildings. And so we will have to make sure, right, that the lease covers it so that we're not kind of experiencing the same thing that we are with Providence right now. But I think if all of those pieces line up, heck yeah, let's keep them standing and have those conversations.
okay. Mr. Gardner?
I had kind of envisioned the idea of us leasing those buildings to them so that they could use their CDS money, and once they were planted and felt permanent and felt at home, I thought, why wouldn't we just sell them to them and then move on from there and have it not be our problem, if that was amenable to them. But obviously, that's a discussion that is further down the road, but that's what I was envisioning.
Mr. Whiteside, any comments?
I believe either the manager or the mayor was probably in touch on this. I believe we have some restrictions on how we can convey that property. Amy or Jared, you probably remember better than I do, but I don't believe we can just outright sell those buildings, if I remember correctly, which I agree that would be the ideal scenario, but I don't think we can. So if either of you can share your memory on that.
Madam Manager?
Yes, we do have deed restrictions on that land for what that land can be used for. We had to go all the way up to the federal level to ask permission to use them for housing for a processing plant that obviously did not go through, and it was a good thing for that plant that it didn't because COVID came. But the healthcare would definitely be a use that it has to be a community use. And so I think that would apply. I think the bigger conversation is going to be that KCHC's business model has them paying $120 a year for rent. And so they would have to make some adjustments and figure out how to make that a viable option. But I don't think that the deed restriction would stop that at this point.
Mr. Ames?
The deed restrictions, if they chose that property and redid it to their standards, is it possible for us to sell the building but not the land?
Almost anything is possible, Mr. Ames.
Is it realistically? I mean,
Well,
because of the restrictions, I'm
we
just saying.
attempted that earlier, that we wanted to keep the land, but we wanted to sell the buildings, and that was a real stopping point for people who had any interest in it. And so if the assembly would have to change their willingness to sell the land, I think, in order to sell the whole thing. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, I guess.
Okay.
Mr. Gardner?
I don't want to beat the dead horse on this. It seems like we're kind of in agreement to go in a holding pattern for a second, but I'd envisioned if they weren't amenable to, again, scratching each other's back with the high school and whatnot, $2 to $3 a square foot, and if they were, $1.20 to $2 a square foot, keeping in line with other nonprofits. Just what I was thinking, but again, conversation for later.
Any other concerns? Okay, moving on. Fourth item on our agenda, land disposal method and sale discussion. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Dr. Smiley. Often, our community development director sits in the audience and doesn't get to talk, so I'm just going to have him come up and lead this whole discussion. Thanks, Chris.
Good evening. At our last work session, we did talk about the Island Lake property, and we had flow charts about Island Lake property and what was needed to be done to get that process going and finished. And the major piece right now is for disposal to the assembly and to determine whether the assembly wants to sell that property. The question of how you would sell it, what method you would use to sell that, and also, thirdly, the terms of sale associated. So in terms of doing that, I did find a resolution from 2017 from the Assembly, which did have terms of sale, and that is in your discussion in your agenda packet for this item. And we also had on there some discussion of the Beaver Lake properties. However, I think those two sets of properties, actually both of those properties would still need to go to the commission for its review. I think the second Beaver Lake property near Von Sheely still actually has to have its minutes approved from the Lands Committee in order for that one to be an completed recommendation from the Lands Committee. But both of those would still need to go through the commission for its public use review before it could go on to the assembly for the disposal discussion. But I think maybe the focus tonight might be more on Island Lake with regards to that resolution, and have the assembly focus on, are you good with going forward with that disposal resolution to come to the assembly? Are you, what is the disposal method you want to choose to have in that resolution? And then are there some terms of sale that you feel are appropriate for including with that resolution?
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. What I'd like to suggest for property sales and terms would be that we do starting bids, sealed bids, starting at assessed value with a 5-year development covenant that the borough retains the ability to repurchase the lot at purchase price if it hasn't been developed in 5 years, and that an owner occupancy requirement for the lot. This would allow for entry-level home buyers to try and buy the lot and give them first dibs, so we don't end up with a bunch of undeveloped lots being squatted on by private entities like we see now. We do, say, a 45-day period on that, and if there are no acceptable bids, then we could open it up to a call-out or other style disposal method that would be open to everyone. But this would be an opportunity for folks to get in on the property at a more reasonable price and allow for actual development of housing to take place on those lots. Something I'd like to suggest that the Assembly also consider is some form of property tax abeyance during the development period. If they're owned by, owner occupancy, if they're sold during that round, we would do suggest a property tax abeyance on the lot until it's developed, to try and further incentivize and make the construction of the home a little more reasonable. Just my suggestions. Thank you.
Mr. Gardner.
I agree with Mr. Johnson, but I'd even go a little bit further. I've been thinking about this topic a lot, and I think a lot of people in the community want to make sure that affordable housing is accessible to everybody. Originally, I had thought 3 years for someone to develop that land, but I think his 5 years is a bit more realistic. But one thing, I'm not sure if it's possible, so, throw me under the bus if I'm out to lunch here, but I would like to see a lottery system, and I would like only one of those lots available to any one buyer. I don't want to see a developer buying up every lot and developing big houses on it. And I like the idea of having that be your primary residence, and I think it should be a primary residence for a set period of time before you can sell it. So I really like the idea of a lottery system, let people be able to get into it at assessed value and, offer them like, hey, Joe Johnson, your ticket got pulled. Would you like to buy this lot, yes or no? They can say no and move on to the next person. That way we can kind of verify that it goes towards the people that really need it, and again, really make sure that it's a primary residence for the buyer.
Mr. Woods.
A couple considerations I'd like to bring up. One, I think that the primary focus for disposal should not be the initial value that we're getting out of it, but more the fact that we're going to make our money on the tax revenue later on those properties. That needs to be kind of kept into consideration. Second off, I really love the idea with the 5-year development. I personally would like to see some kind of condition in that land sale agreement prohibiting specifically contractors or corporations. I think that needs to go to single families, and potentially something like a 10 to 15 year sale restriction to keep it from going to a corporation. Secondarily, though, even if we're going to try the outcry auction or however you want to do the sealed bid, that would require, I believe, a change in Borough Code to allow that disposal method, which I don't believe is currently contemplated in our code.
Mr. Ames.
Let's see. Outcry bids have been done in the past. Most of them were remote lots. I know there were some on Muck Island, some in Sunny Cove. It was years ago, but I attended the outcry bid. Bill Bissett was the auctioneer. Now, this question's for either of you up there. We're supposed to sell it at assessed value by code?
That is correct, yes.
But if we do outcry bid, if it's below assessed value, can we sell it?
Oh,
If the highest bid?
Nice.
It is not assessed value, it is market.
Okay.
thank you, sorry.
Okay, that's
That is
fine.
right.
I'm just, on the outcry auctions, if it's below the market value, the highest one we get, are we capable of selling that or not?
I don't believe you are. I think it has to be at that market value or higher, depending on what the bids are that come in. But I do believe you have some restrictions there, just like you do with what kind of methods of sale you can do in terms of sealed bids or outcry auction.
Yes, okay, no, I was asking that just,
Mr. Woods.
And my apologies, I misspoke earlier. I was referring to lottery as a prohibited method of disposal. It's like not a contemplated method of disposal. Kind of doubling down on the first point I made, though, we need to be really cognizant that we're not going to make our money initially on the price of the lot, not even close. So I would even be okay, like conceptually, with a code change to allow it to go for a lower number or even to an assessed number. Again, we're gonna make our money on it with the property tax. But yeah, just kind of a clarification I'd like to make. Thank you.
Ms. Roberts?
Thank you. Yeah, I think if we're going to sell borough land, we need to prioritize housing for local residents. I think kind of echoing what people are saying already, but starting the bid at assessed or market value. And then I think we do need to have in there that the purchaser intends to use the property as primary residence. And I think that would eliminate corporations from purchasing it, just putting that clause in there. Also, I'd like to see no short-term rental covenant be put in to prevent someone from using that as short-term rental. And I agree with the build requirement within a set time frame, 3-5 years. 5 years sounds more realistic for Kodiak to me.
I do want to say one thing. We tried previously to have owner builders have a reduced building cost and gave them a bonus on it. And the two houses that were built under that were 6,200 square feet and 4,800 square feet. And they could well afford to pay the price for those things. So I think we should stay away from that. The only other question I have is, there's a great deal of interest across the country in small houses. And I wonder whether zoning would allow that in this particular area.
The property is, well, the proposal from the Lands Committee was to rezone it to R2, which would be the 7,200 square foot lot size. If you were going to go smaller than that, you would have to rezone it to the small lot residential zoning. So, I mean,
So
that
it's-
certainly is a possibility.
Yeah. Mr. Gardner?
Director, can you enlighten me, 7,200 square foot, what is that in acres?
It's a city lot.
Ballpark me.
It's
0.16?
Yeah, it's less than a quarter.
All right, I was
acre.
worried that those lots would be a lot bigger, so that's good news to hear. And then if there are R2, I feel like I always agree with you, Mrs. Roberts, but if it's RR2 and it has a owner using it as a primary residence, I see no reason why they can't have an ADU or something along those lines that allows for a short-term rental. I don't like it when people tell other people what they can do with their property. As long as it's primary residence, then, I don't know, there's some wiggle, but not renting the entire property, I agree with.
Yeah, so the proposal from the Lands Committee was to go to R2, which is basically a duplex zoning. They can have 2 units on the property.
But you can have an ADU anywhere, pretty much, can't you?
You can have an ADU in R2. Most people don't choose to go that route
Yeah.
because they can have 2 units in
Yeah.
R2, so.
Mr. Woods?
I don't know if this is contemplated in Borough Code, but I would like to see some kind of clarification and definition of what development looks like. There's no such thing as truly affordable housing in Kodiak. It's just a make-believe buzz phrase that we use to try and make ourselves feel better about our decisions. The reality of it is, what our average cost right now to build a home is like $350,000-ish here. For a great many single-family, or especially single-income families, that's a heavy burden to do within that 3 to 5 year period. So I would personally like to see some kind of clarification of what that definition looks like. Is it a pad? Is it a fully functioning residence? What does it actually look like?
Mr. Hames?
I would be more in favor of the 5-year, but I would consider the construction building one that has a CO, which is certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
And I would consider that a requirement within 5 years. That way, it's a completed building and we're getting taxes on it. That's my opinion,
Mr. Gardner?
that definition.
One thing I want to throw out there, and the reason I was talking about a lottery, I just remembered this. It was several years ago, one of our mayors tried to do something really similar, and he tried to make certain that these lands were going directly into the hands of young families and whatever, just like we're trying to do. However, there was threatened litigation against the borough because a group of developers claimed that it was discriminatory, and the lawyers were like, no, 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 you can't do that. So that was a big part of why I thought about the lottery, and how I don't care if one of our biggest developers, Mike Brecken, wants to build over there, so long as it's his primary residence, whatever. I mean, I think it'll discourage them enough, but the lottery system, I think, eliminates the litigation argument if it's not too hard to throw an ordinance in there and add that to code.
Mr. Smiley, if I may jump in here remotely.
Go ahead, please.
So I agree with many of the points made. I would urge caution for this particular parcel to introduce ordinances. We're kicking this can months further down the road. We've already been waiting years just to get one piece of land in people's hands to build. I'm certainly open to the idea. I support small lot development, but I think that's for future discussion. But for this particular Island Lake property, I agree with everyone. I'm not in favor of starting the process with an outcry auction, mostly because it limits access. So if we don't have time for people to get a bid in and they're not available at that date and time for the outcry auction, they're going to miss out. So I prefer, I don't remember who brought it up, I think it was Mr. Johnson, having a certain amount of time for sealed bids. If we don't get a responsive bid that meets the criteria, then we can open it up further for an outcry auction later on, for anyone. But I think for that first bidding period, sealed bids, first time homeowners, or however we want to do that, I think folks I'm in agreement with, putting some language in there to require it to be their primary residence, like Mr. Ames' suggestion with a 5-year certificate of occupancy. And I also am in favor of, during that period before that certificates issued, some tax breaks there on property tax.
Mr. Ames.
The outcry auction, the one thing Ed has, and maybe we could do it with sealed bids, that you could put a sealed bid on multiple, but have the option to turn it down. Because if you put a bid in on one and someone outbids you, you lose. If they could put a bid in, I think what are there, 4 lots there, on all 4, but have the right to back out if they've already bought one, then, or be eliminated if they already bought one. Because you don't want all 4, so I guess we have to limit it where they could only get one lot. It's your main residence, but you could bid on all 4. But if you get one, then you're eliminated from the others. Thank you.
Mr. Woods.
Not to beat the dead horse with definitions, though, I think if we are going to put terms on these, we need to be very clear about what definitions mean. Primary occupant, like primary residence, that probably, if it's not already a defined term, should probably end up being a defined term.
I have a couple of concerns. One of the concerns here is the descriptions of the other areas, which are listed here as Beaver Lake Drive / Salif Lane, Beaver Lake Drive 2, and Beaver Lake Von Schiel. The Beaver Lake Salif, we looked at those lots there as real steep hills, and you'd have to put a road in. On Beaver Lake Road, there's one set of lots there. There's also a set of lots on Beaver Lake Loop Road. And none of those are close to Von Schiel.
Well, I think, and I did print this out from what was shown at the Lands Committee. So we do have, and I think the one that's Beaver Lake Loop Road is here, and then Von Schiele's kind of over here on the side of
Yeah,
that.
but it's back towards the bend in Beaver Lake Loop Road.
Yeah, and this is the one that still needs the Lands Committee to
Well,
approve
don't
its
they all?
minutes. No, the other ones all have had their minutes approved from the Lands Committee, just the one over here on the top right has not had its minutes approved by the Lands Committee yet.
Okay, I'm not sure about that. I mean, the ones that I remember us dealing with where Beaver Lake Loop Road bends down and heads into Denali Creek Road, and then Beaver Lake Road. Drive from that corner. And there's a creek that runs in there as well, so.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we didn't look really at that Lands Committee. We didn't look at stuff over towards the Bon Shield at all.
Okay, that was on one of the agendas for the Lands Committee discussion, and that, the last one.
So, go ahead.
Just to jump in, because I've done quite a bit of research and I've had quite a bit of people reach out to me. My house is the corner of Beaver Lake Drive and Salif right there. And so there are lands directly across the street, this whole stretch, that are in the process in the Lands Committee, but they're not for the purposes of this discussion. There was a ton of paperwork. Yeah, these guys back here are in for that discussion. There is a ton of paperwork. I have it myself. I think it's actually in my bag here. There was a lot of studies done in that area of why they shouldn't do it. And on the one hand, I think a lot of it was outcry from people in the area that didn't want to see their green space go away.
Oh, big time.
But then there was also some legitimate concerns that came from, I'm not sure which committee off the top of my head, but there's some drainage issues over there, and there's going to be a drain on the sewage system over there. Everything below my house has to run off a pump to get up to the sewage system. And according to a lot of different people that have been involved in construction over there, that whole system may sort of be at capacity. So before we go nuts on there, I think I told you guys at the last meeting I was at that I would forward this stuff that Tanya Kitka had gotten over to me. I will send that all over to you. It's a pretty long document, but it goes back over the course of decades and outlines all of this, and it's all studies that we've already paid for and that we've already done. So, and lastly, I am the one person that would, well, of my neighbors, that would be the most affected by that land being developed, and I'm totally for it. I'm totally into it. I think any land we can develop, I'm all for it, even though I don't really want my trail to go away. But let's look at the effects on that infrastructure before we get too excited about that spot.
It's also,
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Smiley.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Director French, please.
Well, I was just going to say that, I mean, maybe this was, good timing, but I do have a meeting with the City Public Works Director on Monday to talk about the land sale properties in regard to public water and sewer, and also in regards to the comprehensive plan that we're updating. So I will make sure that we cover this area in particular in terms of sewer and water capacity and those issues, and hopefully I'll have some more answers for the Assembly.
Bo, did you have more?
Yes, sir. So, so specific to the property the Island Lake property, those other ones, I agree, we have more discussion needs to be had, but so the decisions we have in front of us now are, do we want to approve the disposal? I'm in favor of that. So I think I would certainly support releasing that property for sale. And the second decision is the method of sale. I'm going to reiterate my preference of sealed bids with the conveyances. I think most of us agreed on. There are restrictions, I guess, and then we can discuss those other properties at another time. But those to get us back on track here with the agenda item, those are the two decisions we have to consider today.
Mr. Woods?
It's just maybe not entirely related to it's related to the topic. Do we know if there's been an environmental impact study done yet for that stuff? I know there is some of that area there between Dark Lake and Beaver Lake is potentially that drainage there does get used by juvenile salmon, so I don't know what.
There's a salmon stream there. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And we have to abide by that. Mr. Gardner, you had more?
I'm forwarding everything I have to all of you right now, and in the second one that says Beaver Lake Historical Docs, I believe it has all those studies in there. It's extensive. It's a 130-plus page document. It should be in your inbox shortly, all of you.
So for everybody on the Lands Committee, watch out. So do you have enough guidance at this point?
Yeah, the one thing I would just to recommend or to point out again to the assembly is for the Island Lake properties, there's already been quite a bit of work done by the surveyor regarding subdividing those lots into 4 R2 lots. So if you were to go to a different zone, that would pretty much we have to redo all that work again. So I think that's why the Lands Committee made their recommendation the way they did, which was rezone it to R2 and continue on with the subdivision process. Okay.
Remote thumbs up here too.
Two
So
remote thumbs up.
So the next step will be starting the resolution to bring to the assembly, like similar to the one that you see in the packet with all of those details, and then we will revisit all of those details in the resolution. You can make changes or amendments when we get to packet review.
Yes.
And we'll, next time we do agenda setting, we'll look at where we want to start putting that on. Mr. Mayor? Mr. DPO, does that sound good?
Absolutely. Let's get this moving.
Mr. Johnson, did you
Agreed.
have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think with the discussion we've had and the terms that have been, I think, generally agreed on, if we would just also cross-check that with code to make sure there's no code revisions necessary prior to that.
Well, it's only 4 lots, but it's a start, and that's the important part, I think, here.
I'm good.
Okay, so let me get my cheat sheet out. Packet review. I think that's this one. Okay. No. Okay, Madam Manager, you want to walk us through this first contract number FY 2026-45 landfill soil remediation with Brecken Construction LLC?
Absolutely. In September of 2018, the borough performed an underground tank removal for the landfill baling facility. During the excavation of that tank, soil contamination was discovered. The contaminated soil was screened and placed into 1 cubic yard line super sacks. We have 71 of them in total. In November of 2019, we submitted a work plan to the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation proposing that land farming method of treating the contaminated soil in site. In September of 23, we submitted the first addendum to the work plan, which was approved due to budget constraints and leadership changes. In January of 26, the KAB submitted an additional addendum to ADC to include updates to the land farming operations. The addendum was approved by ADC on January 22nd of this year. We developed and advertised an invitation to bid on January 28th, which was advertised for the designated 3 weeks in accordance with code. Bids were due on March 30th. There was a mandatory pre-bid meeting on February 20th, and there were 10 bidders or subcontractors of bidders in attendance. At the bid opening, staff received 3 bid packages. Following the review of the bid packages, 3 were determined to be responsible, and Brecken Construction was determined to be the lowest cost responsible bidder. Patricia is here tonight, as she was involved in all of those steps. If you have any specific questions. AD&C worked with us quite a bit. Our original work plan was to build a hoop house out there and have the soil spread out in the hoop house for soil remediation. That way, they are allowing us to do it the cheapest way possible. So we're appreciative of that. Did I miss anything, Ms. Patricia?
Any questions? Any concerns on video? No? Okay, moving on. Contract number FY 2026-46. Picnic table removal and replacements with AIM Maintenance LLC. Is this at Mill Bay Beach?
No.
No?
2 are at Malloy Park, and 2 are to be placed at Sergeant Creek Park.
Okay.
So those two parks currently have wooden picnic tables. They are falling into disrepair. In 2019, the borough purchased a supply of metal replacement tables to be installed as needed. This is a request for quotes. It was developed to hire a contractor to remove and replace 4 tables, 2 at Malloy, 2 at Sergeant Creek. We posted it on the Kodiak Island Borough website on February 9th. Then we had a mandatory pre-bid meeting on February 17th and a quote opening on February 25th. We only had 1 quote submission and determined that it was responsive. A maintenance submitted the only quote, and because it's the only one, it's the lowest cost responsive bidder. The fiscal impact would be $4,600 out of Parks and Rec for the tables at Malloy Park and $4,600 out of grant funding. I can walk you through the history of why Sergeant Creek has its own funding at Sergeant Creek. We moved money from Anton Larson project into Sergeant Creek project a couple of years ago when we installed the new park at Sergeant Creek last year. We had leftover funds in that fund, which we need to be spending. And so this is the start of the spend down of those funds that can only be spent at Sergeant Creek Park. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Thanks. I guess I'm just curious about the price on this. You can get a metal picnic table, and it sounds like this is borough furnished equipment.
Picnic tables have been purchased, yes.
I mean, they're like, I guess it just seems like there could have been a lot more economical way to do this rather than a deep drilled concrete poured footing. $1,000 table and a chain would have done the same thing for a fraction of the cost. So, I don't know. I mean, it's the bid, but it just doesn't seem like, I don't know. Seems like there's a lot less expensive way to get a couple park benches in.
Any other? Mr. Woods?
I suspect a lot of the cost in that's going to go to man hours for doing the concrete work. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's probably cheaper ways that it could have been done. However, I actually conceptually have quite a lot less issue with this than I did with the mill-based stairs.
Mr. Johnson?
Thanks, yeah, and I have no doubt that it's the labor on it. I guess I'm just disappointed that we went with such a labor-intensive design when there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and it seems like we chose the most expensive one in the purchase of the equipment.
Okay, moving on. Contract number FY 2026-53. Pool destructive testing and repairs, project construction documents, and administrative services with Jensen Yorba Wall. Madam Manager.
Thank you. This is the contract with Jensen Yorba Wall. It is clearly below my spending authority. However, because this is an ongoing project, we are hoping to keep the assembly and the community updated as we go along. Jensen Yorba Wall, in partnership with RSA Engineering, have proposed a scope of deconstructive for the lifeguard room. What this will do is allow us to enter a contract with them so that they develop a plan to do all of those things that you see there. The cost is $42,739. We found out today that there might be some more serious issues at the pool than we had thought about before, including adding almost 500 gallons of water a day to the pool. And so if there are bigger problems, it would change this course of action. So we're hoping to know more in the next few days. We're asking the school district to do another test for leaking versus evaporation so that we can see if this is the right method to continue. And so this is the way we're gonna go unless we find out that there's a bigger leakage problem. And so as of right this moment, I think this is still a good plan to do that deconstructive test in the lifeguard room. It wouldn't shut down the pool. But we now have some new information that I'm a little more concerned about, that we're going to have to figure out what's going on.
Mr. Woods?
Do we know what they've been adding for water up to this point, or do we have any kind of
There's
basis?
an autofill function that makes it so that the pool stays at the same level. And so actually today our project manager flew to Port Lions with some maintenance staff that we don't normally have a lot of interactions with. And in those conversations, there were some comments made that caused concern.
So no.
I know it's about 500 gallons a day.
I mean, previous to when we just found out about it is what I was referring to. Like, do we know what the number had been 5 years ago?
No.
Okay.
We do know that the school board or the school district paid $100,000 in maintenance for it over the past year. So it's an expensive toy. Mr. Ames?
So with the autofill system, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you said, the autofill system just keeps it full, which I understand. But historically, they haven't been keeping track of how much water it's been putting in.
I don't have enough information to answer all those questions. This was just a conversation that we had with a maintenance person who was talking about replacing the pedestal for one of the diving boards. And when they took out the screws, water came up out of the screw holes. And that is over ground, not like dirt. Like that's a part of the pool that is not over water. And so he asked them about where the ground water level was. They do have a way to check ground water levels around the pool. And they said it was where it always was, which was a scary answer because it wasn't that high. And so I don't want to like call 911 and freak everyone out. I did let the city know and I let the superintendent know, and we're working with maintenance staff. And I know somewhere the paper right now is taking notes and I'm feeling nervous. We don't know the full story yet, but I do think it's important to say that there might be a bigger issue and this might not be the path that we want to go down. And so I don't want to sign that contract and move this forward until we figure out what's going on with the other issues.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I skipped a couple of things. The first one is obviously the most important. The presentation of the Master Municipal Clerk Certificate and PIN to Deputy Clerk Lena Cruz.
It's kind of strange to speak on this since it's a presentation and award to myself. But I'm filling in for Nova, and this is just making it official, receiving my PIN and certificate. It took a while to get here, but it was official in January, I guess, making it official. So I'm just grateful to Nova and the Borough, the Assembly, for the opportunity to continue this education and learning. And now
you deserve it.
Nova can, do whatever, whenever she wants. Just kidding. No, it's a huge accomplishment, and it's still kind of surreal. So I told them they can't take it back. So.
They can't.
Thank you.
All right. And I also skipped a public hearing. The State of Alaska Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office Beverage Dispensary Liquor License Transfer of Controlling Interest for Kodiak Hana Restaurant, license number 4325. Who
Thank
has
you.
the report on that? You, Madam Manager?
Me. Thank you, Mr. Smiley. So this application is for a beverage dispensary liquor license. Kodiak Hana is just making changes to ownership. So it was initially 100% ownership for Tomio, and now he's doing 50-50 with Miss Fumiko. I'm probably slaughtering that name. And then we're also adding another representative as vice president and director. So just per KIBC 5.01030, we have to do public hearing notices when there is a change. And so this is considered a transfer of controlling interest. So we have to notify surrounding landowners within 1,500 radius.
Yeah.
And so there was 162 total on the list. We haven't received any objections so far. This is kind of just a it triggered the public hearing notices, but it's just a housekeeping for them. So the information is included in your packet, but if you have any additional questions, I'm happy to answer.
I'll drink there. Okay. Moving on. Resolutions. Resolution number FY 2026-14, authorizing the manager to accept the 2026 Volunteer Fire Capacity VFC grant for the Women's Bay Volunteer Fire Department. Madam Manager.
Thank you. Women's Bay applied for and received $4,849.21 through the VFC grant. This is the normal resolution process that we use when the money has a designated area to go to. And so you'll see the resolution on the second page here, just showing that that money would be moved into the Women's Bay Volunteer Fire Department's fund.
Any questions? Moving on, ordinances for introduction. Ordinance number FY 2026-20, rezoning Uzinki Block 3, Lot 2, 2209 2nd Street from R1 Single Family Residential District to B Business District.
Thank
Madam
you.
Manager.
The next three rezones are all in Uzinki. We'll have Chris come up if you do have anything special about these that you want to talk about. This first one is allowing the existing structure on the property to be converted to a child care center on the first floor and 2 vacation home units on the second floor. Do you want to give details, Chris?
The only thing to point out here, the future land use map in this area is listed for public use. However, in order to have the vacation rentals of 2 units on the second floor, they need to be in the business zone in order to be able to do that with the child care center on the first floor. Staff didn't see any issue with that. Future land use map designations of property across the street are actually mixed-use commercial, and so it does seem to be in line with that, and the use it will be for the village of Uzinki to use.
Any concerns? Mr. Gardner.
This all looks good on paper and everything. I thought it was a little funny that we didn't have any input from anybody from Uzinki, so I took it upon myself to reach out to Darren Muller, and we talked a little bit. I know he's going to go through it, but I mean, I have no reason to vote against it, but it'd be nice to hear from folks in Uzinki, and maybe somebody out there has an issue. It's their village. I mean, it's part of our borough, but it's their village. So anyways, my vote will depend on whatever comes back to me from Mr. Muller.
We did notice the rezoning in accordance with code, and there was quite a few notices that were sent out. We did not receive any comments back from those.
Yes.
I just wanted to add to that. So these are up for introduction, so the clerk's office will also be doing public hearing notices prior to the public hearing. So CDD does their notices, and then we also send notices. So they will have an additional opportunity if someone does wish to have any comments or reach out to you.
Okay. Okay, ordinance number FY 2026-21, rezoning Uzinki Track C, Block 1, Parcel 1, USS 4871, or 648 G Street from R1 Single Family Residential District to PL Public Use Lands District.
Do you want me to just?
Oh, go ahead,
I
sure.
can just say it. So, again, this is a rezoning applicant is the village of Uzinki. They have a building that's been recently completed there. It's in the property that was once this lot was once part of the old airport property. Future land use map for this area is not in good shape because it was done when that airport was still in use. And so it's listed as industrial in the future land use map. This property's actually been subdivided off from the old airport property. And therefore, this particular structure is probably similar in use to what's on the other side of the street, which is the health clinic and the village of Uzinki's offices. And so the public use lands designation or rezoning request does seem appropriate for this property.
Okay, moving on to number 3. Ordinance number FY 2026-22, rezoning Uzinki Block 14, Lot 7, 3525 3rd Street from R2 Two-Family Residential District to PL Public Use Lands District. Again,
This is Native Village of Uzinki's application. This is the location of their existing offices, and they're bringing that into compliance because it is zoned currently residential and proposing the public use lands zoning designation.
housekeeping again, right? So, all right, well, that ends that. And we're done with that. Now we have clerk's comments. Madam Clerk.
No comments.
No comments today. Assembly member comments, starting with Mr. Wood.
None that we haven't already gone over. Just appreciated the dialogue tonight.
Madam Roberts.
No comments.
Mr. Ames.
No comment.
Mr. Johnson.
No comment.
Mr. Gardner.
I feel like we did God's work tonight. This is awesome. Thanks, everybody.
And I have no comment either. Madam Manager's already made her comments. Mr. Whiteside.
Hey, just wanted to thank you, Dr. Smiley, for the extra effort this week in helping us get this meeting underway and presiding. Thank you so much.
Even though I forgot part of the agenda. Thank you. Mr. Griffin, any comments?
Yeah, thanks again, Scott, for filling in tonight. I will hopefully be back on island tomorrow. I have a meeting set up with the new Providence CEO next week, and I've been talking with Aerospace State Association people about how Kodiak can be part of the conversation here. Alaska has a chapter, so of that association. So I'm going to see what we can do to get some kind of representation there. It's midnight here, so have a good night.
Night, night. All right, we're done adjourning at, what is that? 8:51.